You are listening to Aim Higher, a Catholic podcast designed to instruct and to encourage the daily practice of our faith. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Aim Higher podcast. I'm Father Anthony. With me is Sister Catherine. And today on Aim Higher, we're going to talk about the stories that Jesus told, his parables. And the one that we're going to talk about today is the parable of the talents. And the parable of the talents is found in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25, verses 14-30. And I'm just going to read the parable. For even as a man going into a far country called his servants and delivered to them his goods, and to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to every one according to his proper ability. And immediately he took his journey. And he that had received the 5 talents went on his way and traded with the same, and gained another 5. And in like manner, he that had received the 2 gained other 2. But he that had received the 1, going his way, digged into the earth and hid his Lord's money. But after a long time, the Lord of those servants came and reckoned with them. And he that had received the 5 talents coming brought the other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou didst deliver to me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained another 5 over and above. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Because thou hast been faithful over a few things, I will place thee over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And he also that had received the 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou delivered to me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained another 2. The Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Because thou hast been faithful over a few things, I will place thee over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. And he that had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I know that thou art a hard man, and thou reapest where thou hast not sown, and gatherest where thou hast not strewed. And being afraid, I went and hid the talent in the earth. Behold, here thou hast which is thine. And his Lord answering said to him, Wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap where I sow and gather where I have not strewed. Thou oughtest therefore to have committed my money to the bankers, and at my coming I should have received my own with usury. Take ye away therefore the talent from him, and give it to him that hath 10 talents. For to every one that hath been given, he shall abound. But from him that hath not, thou also, which he seemeth to have, shall be taken away. And the unprofitable servant cast he out into the exterior darkness, where there shall be the weeping and gnashing of teeth. So what do we take from this parable? Well, first off, a talent, as we understand a talent is a gift, an ability, something that we are good at, something that we do. Said, I have a talent for art because you see that I'm a good sketch artist. I have a talent for music because I can play various instruments. I have a talent for baseball because I'm very athletic, and so on and so forth. I have a talent for sewing because I can sew really well. We have many examples of talents, but a talent, and I can't remember exactly how much it is, but a talent is also of of an amount
Very
of
value.
money, a monetary. Thank you. Monetary value,
I've been up
and
longer this morning than you have, so I should be a little bit more alert.
mm,
I don't
yeah,
think you got up at 3 a.m., did you, Father?
no, no, 3:30. Um, but still, you've been up longer than me, right?
With the time difference.
But anyway, it's if I recall, it's about 10,000 drachmas. So it's quite a bit of money. So you see the parables, or you say he owed 10,000 talents. So that is a lot of money. If compare it to what we make nowadays, Um, so the idea is that these talents are worth a lot because, especially these that we're speaking of, are gifts from God and they are meant to be used. Um, Both the natural and the supernatural. Natural, I named off a few of like the obvious talents, but even our health, our memory, our understanding, our intellect, our life, etc. These are all talents and gifts. Supernatural, faith, hope, charity, sanctifying grace, actual grace, the sacraments, especially the Holy Eucharist. These are talents. These are gifts that are given to us. And we can trade them and put them to good use for the glory of God and the salvation of souls. This parable defends the Catholic teaching of the profitability of good works. Profitability. I think that's a word.
It sounded okay to me.
Sounded good. Good
My
works.
ears did not perk up to correct you, so
I
maybe
think
I'm not,
it's
or maybe I'm not as awake as I thought.
good. Well, and that's it's the thing is that our good works do merit us a place, our place in heaven. To say just faith alone is not accurate because faith, as St. James says, without works is a dead thing. And that is not a lively faith. A lively faith is one in where our works and our beliefs go together in tandem. And here you have an example of that. These talents, these are given to the people to be used and to increase. And if we recognize with humility that that all of our talents come from Jesus Christ, all of our good works come through his merits, especially those on the cross. That's it. So everything that we do, it is really, and it should be, an act of humility. Is recognizing that God gave me this ability and God's given me this opportunity, and I have to make the most for it. First, for his greater honor and glory, then for the salvation of my soul. Someone said, well, why wouldn't the salvation of our soul go first? I said, well, if we're not looking to further the glory of God in our life, then we're not going to be concerned about the salvation of our soul.
Well, that makes me think of when I was in Wisconsin and I sat in on a catechism class with some older students, and one of the questions was, "Are should you love your parents more or love God more?" And of course, it should be really glaringly obvious, but I understand how it's like, well, I should really love my parents. It's like, yes, absolutely, you should love your parents. We love our parents, but you cannot love them more than God. And it's just like, naturally speaking, you cannot. I mean, you're actually, if you love God first, you'll love your parents better. And
Mm-hmm.
if so, I mean, it's just with those two great commandments. You're never going to fully love your neighbor if you do not first love God. So Anyway,
It's just that simple.
it is that simple.
It really is.
I mean, it's like this is not a trick question, but it's like yes, you need to love God more than your
It
parents.
sounds like one though sometimes.
Oh, the whole series of questions in that lesson where I felt trick questions, and there were a couple. I was like, I could go either way. Not like with not with the loving God first, but there were a couple. I was like, yeah, I mean, you could kind of see it from this point of view. So, but there's meant to be discussion questions, which I think is an important way to learn. So.
We need to discuss. We need to understand. We need to put it in real life situations.
Right. It's like,
And
it's just the idea whenever we get like to that mindset, we bring it up, it's just the startling reminder that, rattling off like a parrot the catechism is not actually knowing the catechism. I mean, there's things that we should memorize, but you really need to start having discussions. And it's never too late to start that with your children or among family members, friends, don't be afraid to have, discussion about morality, right and wrong. Trust
well,
yourself,
and
and learn from it, too.
well,
And
and it
then to
doesn't.
have the sorry, I knew you were
Oh,
trying
go
to
on,
say something. I
go
keep
on,
going.
go on.
And I was just going to add, and to have the humility to say, I don't know the answer, but let me find out. If you're really interested in wanting to learn from this, give me the chance to find out. If someone doesn't want to give you the chance to find out, they weren't interested in finding out. Maybe they wanted to just, I don't want to say bully you, but trap you. And I mean, unfortunately, those people do exist. And I mean, you could take that as a lesson to see who they are. And maybe that also a lesson for that is like, well, then I need to start learning a little bit more than I thought I needed. So, just because it's seemingly a bad experience doesn't mean you can't draw good from it. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anyway.
And it doesn't have to be a formal setting. You can have these conversations over in the dinner table. You can just have these conversations as you're sitting in the car driving somewhere. You ask these questions. You make your not just your children think, but your family in general. You need to think, and this is what you're keeping these things in their minds throughout the day, and they're going to be confronted with decisions where they're going to need the gift of counsel. They need the gift of your counsel. So this is why you have these lessons. This is why our Lord spoke in parables. This is why he told the stories to convey truths, to put things in explain them in a way that the people would better understand. So you can put it in ways where your children, other family members, and friends can better understand. Because if you're just going to repeat something that you read in a theology book, which might be might be a little too deep, it's not going to have a lasting impression upon them. It's going to sound like you're trying to talk over them and trying to sound high and mighty. It's not what you have to. It's not what you want to convey. And if it is what you want to convey, stop it, because that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But when we say the glory of God and salvation of souls in using our talents and our gifts, this is a practical application of that. When we see the corporal and spiritual works of mercy being put into action, and this is something that it reminds me. I know I said it in an earlier podcast, but just the quote I got many years ago from a television show, and it was that our talents are God's gift to us, and how we use them is our gift to Him.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zorro. Family Channel.
I was gonna say, okay, I'm gonna have to write that down.
And I was like, that is so true. And remember what we use it. I know I'm repeating myself like a parrot, but come on. For God's greater glory and the salvation of souls. First, your soul. I had the class for confirmation last night and asked the question, about self-love. It's like, do you have to love yourself? Is that important? And it brings up the question, because we can enter into that thinking, okay, but the love of myself is wrong. No, the inordinate love of oneself is wrong. You must love yourself. Even the commandments said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you don't love yourself, if you don't care about your own salvation, if you don't care about whether or not you're going to use the talent and you just bury it out of sloth, which of course the
Or you
sermon,
think you're being pious.
or you think you're being pious because you're hiding that. Of course, that's kind of a whole nother topic there.
Yeah.
You are there. I mean, ergo, you're not. Kind of. I had like the final thought to that. I lost. No. It wasn't you. But ergo, you're not going to. You're not using that talent. You're not looking for the greater glory of God, and ergo, you don't love yourself. And then you won't reciprocate that love to other people in caring about their salvation. That was the thought.
Very nice thought. Well, it just makes me think, because the term self-love has taken such a different direction. So then when Catholics might use the term, it might, make other Catholics jump a little bit. But again, the idea of self-love is, I mean, the world says, you should be able to, do whatever you want, take care of yourself. I mean, we do need proper rest, proper nutrition, all those things. And having a hobby is important too. We have talked about that. Those things are good. Those are things are practical. But don't let things like that get in the way of, well, your spiritual life. I mean, if you want to start incorporating a morning routine, that might involve, a little bit of self-care, in the sense of, maybe you want to exercise before you really get started on the day, making sure you drink adequate water, getting your supplements in. Just attach like 5 minutes before all that to some prayer as well. Will really, and because everything is really a buildup and consistency. That's really the that's really the solution here. But it is okay to do these things for proper relaxation. But I know for myself, if I, especially if maybe I'm not feeling well, like the temptation is like, I need to rest. And truthfully, I probably do, but there's still an element, but I can't fully rest until I have done some prayer. And, sometimes it's easier said than done, depending on how sick you are. But, and the bishop has told me, well, sometimes, your sickness is the offering of a prayer. If you say, Lord, I offer this up to you, and then just let yourself heal. But I think because we are kind of, I don't want to say we're a lazier society, because I know they'll be like, well, the kids today, they have it so easy. I mean, we have so many advancements where we're supposed to have more time than ever. And I feel like we have less time than ever. There's a lot more social obligations, which, can be done over the top, but some are necessary. Trying to find that balance in life. And I think the best way to start finding that balance, that middle ground, is to prioritize some sort of spiritual endeavor, and start, as we talked about, start small. If you're really struggling, just start small and build, because again, consistency is what's going to pay it off.
And if
things I tell myself daily, so
it's things that we have to tell ourselves. We have to remind ourselves of that, because what do they say? I know you might have heard it, that it takes about a month to
at least
really
21 days.
Make 21 days to really make a habit in anything that you do. And it's amazing, because that's not amazing, because we just see it every day, how quickly one can latch onto a vice. And it just reminds me of what Bishop Lewis said many years ago in the novitiate, how, do you want to be a watermelon or do you want to be an oak? Because if your spiritual life, if your foundation is rushed, if it's not properly formed, properly developed, if you do not put in the time and the effort, your spiritual life is going to be like a watermelon. You drop it, it will break. As soon as something happens, it's going to break. But if it is an oak, yes, of course, just like any tree, it's bendable. You can easily manipulate it in early stages.
Or even when you have to prune out things, it can thrive if you prune correctly, I should say. Take a couple limbs off does not outright ruin the tree, but if you take a chunk out of the watermelon,
that's true. You can ruin the whole watermelon. And well, so in that, you can build a foundation that is strong and it's not easily broken. And that should be our goal. It's not an act of pride as long as we understand that all that gift, all that strength, I should say, comes from the gifts of God and the talents which he gave us, which is, if you remember in the talent, you return talents back to God. Of course, the master of the house is God himself. And when we say that he left to another country, it's our Lord returned to heaven. And he is going to expect something from us when our time of judgment comes. So we can say, Lord, you gave me these talents, I've used them, and I've doubled them. But remember, it's not always necessarily the amount that we're able to procure. God is concerned with the goodwill and the effort. That's what he looks at. So you can have that one who he might have received 5 talents, but he only was able to capitalize on it and present 2. But he worked hard for that. He cooperated with the graces. He made his, and we're going to go right to the spiritual analogy of this. He took his spiritual life seriously. God sees the effort, and that's really, he has to. God has to look at our effort because he knows better than we do that we can do nothing without him. And to say, it's like, be holy because your heavenly Father is holy. Be perfect because your heavenly Father is perfect. Learn of me. It is actually impossible for us to reach the level of perfection which God has, because God is perfection itself. He is the supreme being. But what he is saying, I know we've talked about this before, but it is so important to get in our heads that God looks upon our effort and our desire for perfection, never to feel that I have accomplished all I need to accomplish and to stop. As soon as you do, guess what? Doesn't matter if you're an oak. As soon as a strong wind blows you over and you're not braced for it, it's going to fall. Humility is such an important part of how we use our talents.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, as God appreciates the effort, he also recognizes the struggle. And I remember going back to like novitiate days, I think at least he brought it up to me in my novitiate, talking with Bishop Giles, because one of the things I struggle with is distraction prayer. And today was one of those, really, like, my goodness, it was definitely constantly bringing myself back. And I'm like, okay, God appreciates the struggle, but boy, it's just between having a headache this morning and trying to follow mass, like, it's just, there comes a point where it's just, I had to close my eyes and just, Lord, I am not worthy. I made all through mass, and then and I think probably because of the headache, I was defaulting to like distracting myself as you would if any other time too.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, but no, let's focus on this. So just was constantly begging and pleading. And thankfully I got that advice So I can keep reminding myself I'm struggling. I know I'm struggling. I'm saying I'm struggling, and God still will appreciate that I'm still trying, even if it's,
Mm-hmm.
even though I could try harder every time, and absolutely I should be improving. I'm still struggling, but I'm still trying. So just don't let that destroy you, because again, that's what the devil wants, is you to just give up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, you're not good enough. It's like, well, I'm never gonna be good enough in well, really whatever standard I'm gonna set for myself, or even worse, what I set for other people and how I think they should be. Which I I mean, I think it's more like we don't actively want to do that, but sometimes we do try to like look as like, why are you doing
Mm-hmm.
this?
Mm-hmm.
But just remember that, while I'll never obviously achieve that perfection, God loves me and wants me to go to heaven, and he will help me. And we also know the way to heaven is, really there's going to be crosses. So uh, just trying to maintain that balance, don't freak out is basically what I'm saying. Especially if you have like a more delicate conscience. And I think if you find yourself that you might have a more delicate conscience, that's the time to really open up to your confessor. Um,
Mm-hmm.
trying to tackle that on your own is not, I'm not saying it's impossible, but coming from experience, being open, even if you think what you have to say sounds stupid, because I mean, I think I held back on the idea that I'm distracted so much, and I was holding back really due to pride. It's like, how can I still, after all this time, struggle with this and be distracted in my prayers? How can I? How
Yeah.
dare I? But
Yeah.
false humility, pride. So, and the only way to really get through that is to talk to someone, get counsel, um, and then keep on keeping on. So
Yeah. And it, it is a topic that we need to remind ourselves so much about in God's gifts, reminding ourselves um, to practice that humility, to recognize that all that we have, all that we are, comes from God. He is the source of all goodness, and any good we have comes from Him. That is, remember, the foundation of Catholic morality. We are incapable of even one good, meritorious thought without the grace of God. Without God's grace, we can do nothing for our salvation. And well, like I said, that's really where we talk about anything that we do that is meritorious. So, um, now what are some of the things that we can incorporate in achieving this goal? We understand prayer and consistency. We've talked many times about the importance of walking in the presence of God throughout our day by returning to holy thoughts in our meditation, something that we have read, sacred scripture, the Psalms especially, ejaculatory prayers. But what is another thing that we have to look to do? And that is a greater separation from worldly things. I'm not talking about things that are sinful. I'm talking about things that are in themselves lawful. We shouldn't be so consumed with worldly activities. We say, well, during the Lenten season, during the season of Advent, we are encouraged. Well, in Lent we're mandated, really to stay away from going to parties, going out a lot with friends, even with extended family, uh, by having some kind of get together, because because well, even if I'm not talking necessarily that these situations are like occasions of sin in themselves. I would hope that spending time with one's family would not be an occasion of sin. But it reminds me of what was written in the book, Imitation of Christ, in chapter 20, book 1, chapter 20, on the love of solitude and silence. And this is the first paragraph here. Choose a suitable time for recollection and frequently consider the loving kindness of God. Do not read to satisfy curiosity or to pass the time, but study such things as moving your heart to devotion. If you avoid unnecessary talk and aimless visits, listening to news and gossip, you will find plenty of suitable time to spend in meditation on holy things. The greatest saints used to avoid the company of men whenever they were able, and choose rather to serve God in solitude. A wise man once said, "As often as I have been among men, I have returned home a lesser man." We often share this experience when we spend much time in conversation. It is easier to keep silence altogether than to talk more than we should. It is easier to remain quietly at home than to keep due watch over ourselves in public. Therefore, whoever is resolved to live an inward and spiritual life must, with Jesus, withdraw from the crowds. No man can live in the public eye without the risk to his soul, unless he who would prefer to remain obscure. No man can safely speak unless he would gladly remain silent. No man can safely command unless he has learned to obey well. No man can safely rejoice unless he possesses the testimony of a good conscience. And I was going to read the first paragraph, but you know what? This is too good. I am just going to finish it. It's not that long. The security of the saints was grounded in the fear of God, nor were they less careful and humble because they were resplendent in great virtues and graces. But the security of the wicked springs from pride and presumption and ends in self-deception. Never promise yourself security in this life, even though you seem to be a good monk or a devout hermit. Those who stand highest in the esteem of men are most exposed to grievous peril, since they often have too great a confidence in themselves. It is therefore more profitable to many that they should not altogether escape temptations, but be often assailed, lest they become too secure and exalted in their pride. To turn too readily to worldly consolations, how a good conscience would he keep if a man never sought after passing pleasures, nor become preoccupied with worldly affairs. If only a man could cast aside all useless anxiety and think only on divine and solitary things, how great would be his peace and tranquility. No one is worthy of heaven. No one is worthy of heavenly comfort, unless they diligently exercise themselves in holy contrition. If you desire heartfelt contrition, enter into your room and shut out the clamor of the world, as it is written, "Commune with your own heart, and in your chamber and be still." Psalm chapter 4, verse 4. Within your cell, you will discover that you will only too often lose abroad. The cell that is dwelt in continually becomes a delight, but ill kept, it breeds weariness of spirit. If in the beginning of your religious life you have dwelt in and kept it well, it will later become a dear friend and a welcome comfort. In silence and quietness, the devout soul makes progress and learns the hidden mysteries of the Scriptures. There she finds floods of tears in which she may nightly wash and be cleansed. For the further she withdraws from all the tumults of the world, the nearer she draws to her Maker. For God, with his holy angels, would draw near to him who withdraws himself from his friends and acquaintances. It is better to live in obscurity and to seek the salvation of his soul, than to neglect this even to work miracles. It is commendable in a religious, therefore, to go abroad but seldom, and to avoid being seen, and to have no desire to see men. Why do you long to see that which is not lawful for you to possess? The world itself passes away, and all the desires of it. The desires of the senses call you to roam abroad, but when their hour is spent, what do you bring back but a burdened conscience and a distracted heart? A cheerful going out often brings a sad homecoming. A merry evening brings a sad morning. For every bodily pleasure brings joy at first, but at length it bites and destroys. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 31, 32. What can you see elsewhere that you cannot see here? Look at the sky, the earth, and all the elements, for of these all things are made. What can you see anywhere under the sun that can endure for long? You hope, perhaps, to find complete satisfaction, but this you will never do. Were you to see all things present in existence spread out before your eyes, what would it be but an unprofitable vision? Lift up your eyes to God on high, and beg forgiveness for your sin and neglectfulness. Leave empty matters to the empty-headed, and give your attention to those things that God commands you. Shut your door upon you, and call up Jesus the Beloved. Remain with him in your cell, and you will not find so great a peace anywhere else. Had you never gone out and listened to idle talk, you would be better to have remained perfectly at peace. But if it pleases you to hear the news of the world, you must always suffer disquiet of heart as a result. Thomas the Kempis. And you just listen to that. And of course, yes, it's directed predominantly to those in the religious life, as it mentioned, the monk, but it applies to us all. We had a conversation. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, you go on.
Well, I was going to say we had a conversation a few days ago. Sister and I. Yes, we did. And one of the things like I brought up, because yes, we can enjoy certain things in this world, things that, can tickle the funny bone in that. And I was working my desk here like I often do. And I watched some comedy skit and I laughed. It tickled my funny bone, as I said. I really found it funny, but it's like, turn it off. So, well, you just get to work. And to have some little background, I was playing a Gregorian chant. Gregorian chant, especially when it's the chanting of the Psalms and such, it is, you can just tell by the melodious tone, the prayer that is being said in the chant. And I noticed how it just is a different effect upon me, upon the soul. Where the other effect of this worldly thing, which again, in itself, it was nothing wrong with it. It was superficial. It was on the surface. But when hearing this prayer being sung, being chanted, it moves the soul in a different way. And why would we not want our souls to be moved deeper into the love of God? Why do we want to be consumed in worldly things? Even the pagan philosopher Seneca, which Thomas the Kempis quoted, the more I go about with men, I return home lesser a man. A lesser man. What does that mean? That's a man that's where your convictions are shaken. Your resolve is not as secure, and you're opening your mind to distractions. You mentioned distractions before, sister, and we can have distractions of things that are actually important that we do, our duties and responsibilities and what we have to do that day, and you take away in prayer. But that's comes naturally with what we have to do. And if we are a person who takes that seriously, it's going to come to our mind. But it's just, okay, now's not the time or the place. Dear guardian angel, remind me about this later. Let me focus upon the prayer right now. But we don't need to keep adding distractions upon distractions. We don't have to keep stimulating ourselves with worldly entertainments. This is one of the reasons why you see so much comment to people about, you say, hey, children. I don't just see children on the phones, looking at our phones. All that is a more obvious manifestation of the spiritual dilemma that we are in, that we're looking for constant superficial stimulation, and our consolation we're going to the world for. Something happens. I have to get some comfort food. I have to go get a distraction, go hang out with friends, or go to a movie, or just watch something on YouTube so I feel better. But you're not dealing with the root of the problem. You're not actually helping the distress of your soul. I'm not saying you can't use these things to help with that, but first things first, turning to holy prayer.
And they're just as you're talking, I was thinking about how, even we have lots of different choices and way to find comfort and distraction, even with the spiritual. Because, if you're on a journey for better health, mm-hmm. and we all know that involves, more rest, more water, better eating, and something happens in your distress, and you might want to go to something that will bring you some joy. And there's something, it's really just finding the balance of really just everything. Everything's in the middle here. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I could really go for a cookie. This cookie will be good. Well, if it's just the one cookie, you're probably okay. But we often know, well, then it's multiple cookies or lots of things. We end up feeling way worse afterwards. And then it's a downward spiral. But realizing that, and that's how the other distractions work too. You start watching one funny short, if you will, or reel. Mm-hmm. And anyone who has done it knows they come one right after another. That's why I try not to even.
And I try not to even
go down that path.
An hour and a half has gone by.
Right. It's and because we want to put off what
you want to keep up that stimulation. Right. And it's like so many things, worldly things, is that the more you expose yourself to these things, the more you're going to have to do in order to achieve the same stimulation. Is it a lot of that, we talk about people with addictions, and mental health is a topic that you see all over the place. They have these companies that you can get a therapist online, and and do that, and it's helpful. I mean, I have never said that going to a therapist is a waste of time, because as a person who at least understands the human condition enough to be a sounding board, and as long as they're reasonable, I say that not someone like a Freud who said, this is your animal urges and all that. We are aware of that. But with that, you have to incorporate. So anyone here who has gone to a therapist, or still goes to a therapist, you have to make sure you incorporate your spiritual needs within this, your prayer. And that's what's going to actually help strengthen you to move forward. Because a lot of these things, it can become very, you could almost become narcissistic with the approach if you're not careful. You always have to look to God. Even you go to AA, they talk about having a higher power and overcoming addiction. They don't actually state what that higher power is, but they recognize the fact it's something outside of yourself that has to influence you. Because if you rely too much within yourself, well, what are you of your own? Nothing.
Well, and just really anything, as we talk about again, consistency, but building up to it. I mean, someone that wants to strengthen their body is not going to just wake up one day and want to go lift a large amount of weight. You have
You're not going to train like a Navy SEAL.
Right. You have to, in order to be successful and not injure yourself, it's little at a time. Same with a healthier eating style. And I'm not going to villainize any food type whatsoever. That's because I don't believe in that. I think everything in moderation. I mean,
of course, moderation is key.
Yeah. Because we also know it's if you go on this side, don't do this, don't absolutely, if you completely say I'll never have a French fry again, all you're gonna think about is that French fry. But if you leave it as a possibility, I can have it if I really want it, but also setting yourself up for success in other ways in eating. Mm-hmm. Just if you know that you're going to be, let's say you are trying to establish a more cleaner eating style, or which I don't want to call it that. It's just eating, taking care of yourself. That lifestyle. But something's going to come. You're going to go to a birthday party, and there'll be other things. Just allow yourself, maybe eat something that's nutritious for you before you go, so that way you can kind of keep control of that. And that's the thing. We only have so much control. But we do play a big part in how things go in many aspects. Same with our prayer life. You have to put in the work. You have to be aware. You have to be consistent. You have to not get discouraged if something gets thrown at you that you weren't prepared for. And also sometimes having to stand up for yourself. And I'm not talking about things necessarily. I mean, you definitely have to stand up for yourself and do the right thing when it comes to someone trying to get you to do something sinful, of course. But let's say it's just something like, you're getting pressured to eat a donut with everybody else, and you really don't want that donut. I mean, you could say, you know what, just because you're all eating donuts does not mean I have to. I don't think I'm a better person because I don't want the donut. I'm not judging you because you are eating donuts, and hey, it's fine. I'm not so inclined. I mean, that's not what I want. But
especially if you're trying to incorporate good habits and you've done well, and that's a temptation. Just like in our spiritual life, we have to build ourselves up to it. It's like building up a sort of immunity. We're not going to be fully immune to sin, but if there's a habit that we fall, a bad habit, a vice that we've acquired, you say by God's grace you overcome that vice. You have to really avoid any temptation that you can control, because you don't know how much the stirrings can affect you. And then soon you'll be relying on your own strength. Because as soon as we willingly walk into an occasion of sin, something that we know is an occasion that there's a strong probability that we're going to fall, even though we might not fall that time, maybe the next time we allow ourselves to be in that situation, we will, because we relied on ourselves. So you have to have a time of separation from these things. Because I bring this up because there's some things we can't avoid. They're out there. They're not fully in our control, but what we can control, we should.
Well, it's kind of like, you may be out driving. I don't know if it's such a thing now because I haven't really paid attention, but I remember, years ago, there'd be billboards all over the place and advertising things that are not very good. But you still have to go out there and drive. So you can make the active choice to just ignore that. Maybe, when you see something obscene,
Mm-hmm.
Even just in passing, pray for those. That's the time to say, pray for those who put that out there. Pray for their conversion. Pray for anyone who also is on the road and is going to be exposed to this, because you never know what that will do. I mean, but you can't just not, if that's the only way to go to work is to go down this road where you know there's
Mm-hmm.
something obscene, you know, you can't just not drive. Like that's not an option. You know, you're not going to avoid be able to fully avoid those things, but also just don't panic. But that's the thing, setting yourself up. Where just as I was going with, you know, you're going to go to a party where there'll be things that you don't ordinarily eat. Well, you know, set yourself up. You know, make sure that you have like a good source of protein or something prior to that, so that you feel good in the process. Because we know, like, if you say, well, I won't eat anything at all and I'll just power through, and then if you do slip up, the amount of guilt you feel it's way worse than if you would just said, you know, this is what I need to do to succeed. This is what I know I need. Do it, and you'll come better for it. And that's really just how we need to approach our spiritual life. I mean, how many people have how do I want to say this? Do you have any idea? No. Okay.
Nope.
Just how hard it is. So I'm trying to be delicate here, because it just in the sense it's not like a difficult subject. It's the idea that I know that there are people that can't get to mass regularly for various reasons, but those who can and do, and then something upsets that for whatever reason, the amount of I guess, because we all know that when we go to church and we see the sacraments, we do feel better. But of course, going to church isn't supposed to be what you get out of it. It's what you're supposed to bring to it as well. Again, because it's there's an effort in all of it if you really want to draw fruit from it. But when you start putting that off, start finding your reasons to miss mass, it doesn't take long to just think, what's the big deal, you know? And that's what happens when you go off your not diet, but like your healthier goals. Like if you skip one day of exercise, it's very easy to skip the next one, the next one, and the next one. Just if you skip a day of prayer, and like I said, if for some reason you woke up in that morning and you couldn't pray for whatever reason, and it might be a very justifiable one, like your child was sick in bed and you had to take care of that, and then you had to rush off to work, whatnot. You know, that's why I like the morning offering, because it's simple and to the point. You know, get in the habit of doing that and have it memorized. You can say it at any time. You know, the Hail Mary. Say a Hail Mary throughout the day. Just say, Lord, you know my plight. You know what I'm dealing with. Let me make all of this a prayer, make this a sacrifice. Then you're not feeling like, well, the day is shot, I'll pray tomorrow, you know. And that, in worst case scenario, you go the whole day, at least before you close your eyes, you know, take time to thank God, say an act of contrition, and pray for, better tomorrow. You know, the thing is, it's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be fighting our whole life for it. And even when things are going pretty well, we know that crosses are part of life. Don't let them take you down. Because if we follow him, he'll make it light, he'll make it sweet, he'll make it a joy. So, but you have to put in the work as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is true. Yep. Okay. Well, yeah, it's things that we all know that we're supposed to do, that we have to implement. Have the desire, have the intention. God, remember, he sees that. And if we look to do all things for the love of God, for his greater glory, and we have to repeat that intention, we have to remind ourselves, remember, you're not alone. You have your guardian angel. You have the Blessed Virgin Mary. You have the saints here to help you. You have your fellow Catholics who, again, we should help to encourage you in your faith, and to, as St. Paul said, to speak to one another in psalms and spiritual songs, and there's the beauty in that, to be able to talk about the faith with those who have that same goal, who have the same desire in mind, to live a life in conformity with the will of God, in imitation of Christ, and to then enter into eternal life. That is what we are striving for. Anything else, sister?
Well, and I just wanted to add, and I'll put a link to the particular podcast I have in mind, but last year we did a series with His Excellency about the different virtues for the month, and the virtue for January is perfection. Lots of good wisdom in that episode from His Excellency, but just because one of the questions someone asked, and I think this applies with the whole talents, is it okay to advocate for yourself to, you're working hard, you're due for a raise. Yes, you should absolutely ask for a raise. There's also nothing wrong with seeking a higher position. I mean, we're all given different abilities. Some of us are meant to be doctors, some, teachers, and we all have different talents for it. Different gifts that God has given us to thrive in these areas. And there's nothing wrong with seeking those things. You are not going to be a better Catholic by just always seeking the lowest. I mean, because we all have a part to play, a role. We're not all, because I think if you want to play the part of always seeking the lowest, that's just really for your self-satisfaction. That's the false humility. And there really is, I know in today's world, they look down on the family life, motherhood. They say what does a mother do if she's able to stay at home and raise her children? What contribution is there? There's a lot of contribution. But that's not to say that those who do have to work outside the home are any less, are working any less, I guess, or they're not doing their part. I mean, unfortunately, in today's world, a lot of families, it requires 2 incomes. I don't think those are, necessarily things people jump into lightly, but also this to be a stay-at-home parent is also it's a tough job. There's difficulty everywhere. There's no better choice. It's, whatever God calls you to, that is you'll find that peace within, I guess, really the vocation for one. But, when I think about how people have different aptitudes for things, we have a friend she's a funeral director. I can't even tell you how much I admire her, because I could not do what she does, but she has the aptitude for it. She has the desire for it. This is something she wanted to do from a very young age. But it's just a reminder to me, we're not all called to do that, but then it's a very obvious example of someone who is given that to do that. I mean, that job requires a lot of compassion and a lot of knowledge. And just with anything. I know teachers. I know, I don't know too many doctors, but I'm not even sure if I know a lawyer personally. But we all have our parts to play to complement one another, and work together, and if we're all doing it for the greater honor and glory of God, it's just, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's a good thing. How about it?
Well, if we were all seeking to use our talents for God's greater glory, the salvation of our souls, and the salvation of our neighbor's soul, if that was our goal, and to avoid anything in this world that would compromise that goal, and then always return to put first things first, returning to God, this would be a happier world. This would be a utopia. Because if we were all imitating Christ, if we're all being Christ-like, then that means Christ, our Lord, is truly King in this world. He is King no matter what. But Do we recognize him as our King? Do we recognize him as our Lord? And if we all did, what a wonderful world it would be. So with that said, sister, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Deo gracias.
Deo gratias.